In today's episode of the Pathwing Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Stephen Lin, who is hailing over from the team at Semarchy. And basically, he is in the product marketing arena. That's his home. And today we're going to be talking about product marketing, but also how product marketing touches up on growth and marketing per se for Semarchy. And basically, I'm just pleased to welcome Stephen to the show. Great to have you, Stephen.
Thank you, Lucas. Great to be on the show.
Of course.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, maybe give people like a quick 360 overview. What is the company all about?
Yeah, so, Semarchy is a master data management platform and a data integration tool all in one. So, what that essentially means is companies these days, they have, 10, 15, a dozen different systems. And each one of them might have, you, Lucas, as a customer, either in the CRM system or when you click an ad or when you contact support. But putting that all together and have one clear picture of who Lucas is a lot more difficult than you might seem. So what we essentially do is we kind of marry all that, consolidate all that data together and make sure that we can build you a single view of all your customers or all your vendors and business partners, all your assets, etc. So then you can actually, take actionable decisions on that, whether it's for analytics or, operational decisions on, what to do next based on the insights that you uncovered.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. That gives a very succinct and very clear overview. Who would you say is sort of the primary user? Like, what types of companies are they coming from? Who are they? What positions do they hold? Like, who is sort of, getting the most out of Semarchy?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the great things about Semarchy is, we actually have a lot of customers. We're still a startup. We're, I think, this, one of the smaller players in this space, but we serve, Fortune 500 clients all the way to, smaller, medium-sized businesses. But I would say the, profile of someone who typically would create the most value of our product is typically someone in the data analytics or enterprise architecture arena. So people who, kind of are in the weeds, touching the data, and creating value from it, but also being able to talk to the business and say, what can I actually do with this data? So, at the end of the day, it is the people who are the bridge between business and IT that get the most value from our product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, very good. Now, how do these folks learn about Semarchy? Like, what would you consider their journey to be like in terms of sort of the clients acquisition channels that you leverage?
Yeah, so we're kind of in the midst of figuring that out right now. Traditionally, people have just been word of mouth hearing about our product and how good we are. We actually recently just been recognized by Gartner as a customer's choice because we had in the last 12 months, 100% of companies would recommend us. So that's a pretty significant milestone for us. Mm-hmm. So typically it's through those because we're still a smaller player in a larger space. So it's been kind of inbound activity from just how good we are as a product. But now we're expanding to other channels like working with great integration partners and as well as creating educational content to make sure that, customers who are coming in really understand the value of why they should have, master data management and integration and how does that help their business and their use cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Now, obviously you're a product marketer and it depends a little bit on per company. Like sometimes the product marketer would sit very close with the marketing team, maybe even down to, working, for example, like on the website, bring in copy. Sometimes they're way more on the product side of things. How do you define product marketing at Semarchy? Like where do you personally, find yourself the most?
Yeah, so right now, mostly I work with the marketing team, but I think the interesting thing about the product marketers, you do kind of sit, you kind of like, have to work across down the whole stack, right? So, the top level marketing, but also to the sales, because what you put out as your message and what you, on this visibly, right, on the website or in the copy in your ads, that has to still be related to the sales team and enable them to kind of, still relay that same message and the value proposition as they're going through their sales activities. To when they close, we still had to talk to the customer support team and, how do we support them? If we say that we have a great support team and, we'll be with you to answer your questions. But then, when we get to the support, when they become a customer and we don't actually, fulfill on that promise, there's going to be a misalignment there. And then obviously the product, right? When we have, new features coming in, or we hear, requests from customers, how do we then, resurface that to make sure that we handle objections up top? So a long-winded answer to your question, but right now I sit mostly with the marketing and sales team, but throughout kind of like my day-to-day activities, I am talking basically across all the different functions.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Very cool. So what now? How do you then personally sort of what sort of role does you play for the page in itself? Like, what's your part in trying to say, what, that's the message that we want to bring across. That's the message that should be sitting on the website. Like how deep are you getting involved, or do you see that as being separate? Because, we had a lot of product marketers on the show, and they really run the gamut from being like hands-on writing copy to being very remote from that outside messaging.
Yeah, so I would say, right now, because we're still kind of, trying to understand, we're going through a little bit of our growing pain, but we're still trying to understand, who are we as a company, right? And that's a really monumental moment for a lot of companies, but I think we're on the cusp of figuring out. So, my role right now is a lot of, hearing the voices of the customer, but also, our internal voices of our, employees and stakeholders of, what are we hearing, where are the disconnects, and then building a strategy and a messaging framework around what I'm hearing. So I'm super in the weeds right now, gathering insights and comments and reviews from, our customers, but also, hearing the kind of concerns, but also highlights from our internal stakeholders, and making sure that they all align. So then when we are building out our messaging framework and the overall campaigns, they all say the same thing, and we're moving in parallel together with how we want to present ourselves.
That makes sense. Very cool. No, that gives us a very good overview on how you're thinking about the page, how you're thinking about the people learning about Semarchy. What have you personally learned as a product marketer? Like what is important when it comes to sort of communication on the website to actually drive signups? What is there certain approaches, certain methods, certain tools that you've been coming across over the years that you find to be very helpful in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important thing is being relevant, right? It's easy to have like generic copy and say we're the greatest or whatever, right? But what they really want to know is, we're the greatest for your specific use case. Like, let's say, industry, that could be either be in industries like, banking or healthcare or manufacturing, or, to your personal like success as like, a role who would use our product, right? So, how can we help you as a data and analytics or enterprise architect make your job easier, but also make you look good, right? Like how does our product actually make you hit those performance metrics? Because at the end of the day, right, people buy the product, and if you're generic and you don't really speak to them to like their values and how they can succeed, you're going to lose, a lot of that. It can be great messaging, right? Like you can have the greatest product, but if you don't speak directly to, why it'd be helpful to them, you'll lose them, I would say 90% of the time.
Yep, that makes total sense. Now we spoke about growth. We spoke about what you guys are doing. We spoke about the website a little bit. Now would love to learn a little bit about yourself before we actually wrapping it up today for the Pathway Presents interviews. I would love to know you as a product marketer, like where do you like to keep on educating yourself? Because there is more and more content appearing, right? For the discipline, for the department of product marketing. What's your go-to resources?
Yeah, so I actually, one of my favorite things to do is actually browse. I don't know if you've ever heard AppSumo. So there, I like to look at new tools and technologies coming up that can help me as a marketer, understand all this volume of data and what I can do to leverage it, right? So every week I usually just kind of take a look and there say what are the emerging tools and what are the use cases for myself as a marketer. So I think that's super helpful. Tools are obviously not the end all be all, and it won't solve everything, but it does kind of help you get a good understanding of, how can I reduce my effort to make sense of, everything that's out there, and ultimately, bring great educational content resources to prospective customers.
Very cool. Nice. I have some rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today. Are you ready for those?
I think so, yeah.
Very good. What is the last book that you read?
So I actually I don't read a lot as much, but I do listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last podcast, but I typically follow Planet Money and How I Built This. So those are the two podcasts that I typically try to keep up with week to week.
Very cool. It's very funny. It was actually mentioned in the How I Built This was mentioned in the last episode as well. So it seems to be a very good
amazing.
one. It seems to be recommended from several sides. Very, very good. Now, what's the one thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
So, the most right now, again, is kind of finding our identity, who we are and how we differentiate ourselves amongst all the competitors.
Awesome. Very cool. What's the one thing that you would fix if technology wouldn't be a boundary anymore for marketers and product marketers today? What's the one thing you would fix about your role?
Oh man. That's a good question. Can we come back to that?
Of course, you have a wild card. So now let's move on. What is the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Oh my gosh. So I recently had to write quite a bit of Python code just to make sense of all the reviews and text analysis. And it's been a minute since I've kind of been that deep into the coding. And obviously when I first got back into it, there's a lot of errors. And most of it were really simple things like just a syntax like semicolon and indent. And I forgot kind of how important these little things are to the overall structure. So the last things that would keep me up are probably, a couple semicolons and bad spacing here and there.
Nice. Very good. You let us a very deep insight into your inner workings. Very cool. Now, last question. What would be the one advice if you would sort of restart your career as a product marketer today? What's the one thing that you would think every product marketer should know?
I would say learn how to distill and simplify. I think that's something that I didn't learn until a couple years into my career. How important as marketers, sometimes we get super geeky of like all this cool data coming out and we're like, here, look at all this. But making meaning out of it is a lot more difficult than you might expect. But that's what people appreciate. It's like, give me 2 or 3 things that I need to know that makes my life better and easier from all this great research that you've done, right? And that's really all they care about. So, if I could give myself some advice, is learn how to simplify because, people typically aren't as geeked out on this, super in-depth stuff as you probably are.
Very cool. So, Stephen, thanks a lot for being a guest on Python Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Semarchy, what's the one thing that people should remember?
I would say dream big, but start small. Anyone can dream, but not a lot of people can kind of find the next step to achieve that dream. And that's how how our approach is different. So if there's one thing you should take away from Semarchy is, dream big, but don't forget to start small.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Python Presents.
Of course. Thanks, Lucas.